that existed for Israel, right? And I quoted Genesis earlier. And the fact is there just isn't enough water in Israel. There's not enough rain. Most of my country looks like desert, or a good portion of it. And there's not enough water. The pie, the amount of water we've got, isn't big enough. And even worse, making it even more challenging, the natural water source for Israel comes from our northern neighbor in Syria. Now, by a show of hands, if you ran a country, if you were in charge of Israel, would you want to trust Syria for your water? Anybody vote yes? Nobody. So my point here, friends, the issue of water for Israel isn't just a food security issue, it's a national security issue. It's an issue of life or death. Literally. If you don't have enough water, you will die. You cannot have a country. So that's the challenge that has existed in Israel since time immemorial, since Jacob sent his sons to Egypt. But in the modern 20th century, now the 21st century, what do you do about it? How do you plan at a national level if you have a national security challenge? Now, if it's a war and peace challenge, you send your young men and your women to the army and you teach them how to drive tanks or how to fly airplanes, and you hope to be able to be able to do national defense. But how do you do water if it's a national security issue? Well, first is you have to save every drop in the pie that you've got. You've got to make sure that there are no leaks, that the water isn't slipping away, that when you do agriculture, that you're doing it with an innovation like drip irrigation. Over 95% of farmers in Israel use drip irrigation. In South Africa, the number is about 15%, 1.5. So 85% of the farmers are using flood irrigation methods in South Africa. And one of the reasons is because water is basically free. Water is a right. Water is like air, like oxygen, like democracy, a right of every person. But why does water come out of the ground? And that's a right. But oil or diamonds or coal are a commodity. Why do they have value and we need to buy them, but water not? In Israel, we treat water like a commodity. Water has value. In other words, when you grow an orange, right? I brought persimmons today, but I could equally do it as an orange. Scientifically, how much of that orange is water? About 83%. Okay? If it's a watermelon, it's even more. It's like 94%. So if you're Israel and you grow delicious oranges and you sell them to Holland, right? It doesn't make any sense. Basically, you're selling them water. The Dutch have enough water. And so we can't afford to not give water a value, to give water a price. It's too dear, it's too rare in Israel. A crop like cotton is massively water intensive to grow. And so that if water doesn't have a cost, you're going to run out. And other people can grow cotton more effectively. And so one of the core innovations that Israel did is it gave water a price. Treated it as a commodity with a value. And so the farmer now has to do maths. Right? We went from law to agriculture. Now we're going to move over to math and to business. If you want to grow cotton or persimmons or oranges or tomatoes, you have to make sure that the crop you're going to grow has a customer, has a market, has a value, or don't do it at all. And save the one, let somebody else use the water. And not that central government in Israel tells the farmer what to do. We don't. You want to try to grow cotton in Israel and make a profit, good luck to you. You probably won't be able to. And so most of the farmers in Israel have switched over from cotton to a fruit like persimmon, which is an oddity, it's rare, it has a significant value to be able to sell in Europe for a good profit. And so you factor in the cost of the water. But in South Africa, if a small-scale farmer, right, who is like the kinds of farmers that you talked about just now, is debating whether to use the traditional methods to grow mealies or oranges or apples, the way that her father or mother or grandmother did over the years, and is debating whether to just do it that same traditional way with the little bit of water that she has, or to make an investment in drip irrigation. Today in South Africa, there's no debate. There's no reason for her to use drip irrigation because water has no value, has no cost. My argument here is South Africa needs to start charging for water. Now I'm not a politician. I'm certainly not a South African politician, and that would be a hard sell. But you don't have enough water, friends. So that's the pie you've got. You've got to save every drop of the pie that you have. The second is, how do you increase the pie? How do you make the supply bigger? Well, South Africa, you're lucky. Because on either coast, on three sides of South Africa, you're surrounded by water. Right? The Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean. What's the problem? And then you talked to the problem earlier. The problem is it's salty. So there are two answers. One, there's lots of fruits and vegetables that can grow in brackish water. And there are technologies that exist today to use brackish or salt water to grow sweet fruit or vegetables. The technology exists. Let's encourage farmers to do that, rather than the clean, purified, sweet water. If you can do it and use that water, then you're automatically adding to the... The second is the issue that my friend here asked about desalination. And the answer is yes, Israel has the technology, and we're a world leader in that area. We use reverse osmosis. I can say to the water students from TUT will understand what I'm talking about, is the methodology that's used for desalination. Israel has 5 desalination plants across our country. And so 50% of, and the water goes into our national pipeline. Like you have this is another thing that we have in Israel that you don't have in South Africa too. You have a national grid for electricity, right? That one of the successes, by the way, of the South African government since the time of democracy is it's widening that grid to more and more people, so that there had been a time not too long ago that a majority of South Africans were not connected to that grid. But a vast majority of South Africans today are. But you don't have a national water grid. Basically what you say to each community is you're in it for yourself.